Hey, I'm Summer. Thanks for stopping by. If you've been here before, welcome back. If you are new, welcome. I do want to put a warning on this video. It is very graphic and violent, and I do put in scenes where they do say certain graphic things. So warning, please. So this video, I put it together and then I started finding more things on it. So I put it together as best as I could with what makes sense to me. So how this case really started in my eyes was with a Kelly Matthews.
Defendant, but maybe didn't go forward on charges or for whatever reason didn't find justice in the justice system.
That's what sparked this story after weeks of covering Wilson's trial and death penalty recommendation. Kelly Matthews dated Wilson and was interviewed by our West Palm Beach station shortly after he was named a person of interest in October 2019.
He kidnapped me and almost killed me.
And most recently, Matthews has been vocal on TikTok.
I dated this man. I don't want to be quiet about this.
Quiet about what she claims Wilson did to her in Palm Beach County. Matthews met Wilson in 2018 online, calling him charismatic and polite. She said things changed when he started reportedly using drugs.
It was just like a very toxic relationship, but he was never violent, ever.
Until February 18th, 2019, she claims. Matthews says Wilson agreed to go to a rehab in the Keys, but Matthews said that wasn't true, and they got into an argument.
So I got back in the car and put my seatbelt on, and that's when he started choking me.
She says Wilson then cut off her clothes and eventually put her in the back of her car. Matthews says he sexually assaulted her, tied and gagged her.
At some point, he had bit my face.
She says he drove them to the Keys and Wilson got out and left. Matthews says she drove home.
I should have stopped at like a gas station or something, but I think I thought no one would believe me.
She and her mom called police. Matthews says she went to the hospital where they did a sexual assault kit and took photos of her injuries. In a police report I obtained from the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, it says they interviewed Wilson, who did not admit to any assault. The report says Matthews did have bruising on her neck and a cut to her lip, but they did not arrest Wilson.
He was like, no, this is hearsay. We don't have any probable cause.
He, as in the detective, who also put in the report, there are no witnesses to the alleged crime and no evidence to establish probable cause.
Do you feel like the system has failed you?
Absolutely.
I reached out to the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, asking why they did not arrest Wilson despite visible injuries.
I don't understand how someone can do something so severe to somebody else and not even get detained for it.
About 8 months later, Wilson was in Cape Coral and killed Christine Milton and Diane Ruiz. Matthews sees his conviction and death penalty recommendation as some sort of justice.
I feel like this is good for everyone that he's hurt.
Matthews says she wants to talk about what happened for her own sake and for other domestic violence cases.
I want people to know that they can leave, get help.
As for Wilson, he's in jail, waiting to see if judge will agree to the jury's recommendation and sentence him to death.
We're a strong group of people that he didn't beat, and unfortunately it took 2 women dying for him to get noticed. You didn't win, and you're going to get what you deserve.
Wade Wilson did not get anything for this first one, Kelly Matthews. Now let's go to 8 months later. October 7, 2019, it starts with the police visiting a spa in Fort Myers, Florida. They find a Melissa Montana's badly beaten. Melissa had been dating a man named Wade Wilson, and their relationship started off rocky. They had been dating for a while. The night before, Melissa and Wade went out to a bar named the Buddha. Melissa then had Wade hang on to her keys because Melissa didn't have a purse, didn't maybe have pockets. She had him hold on to her keys for her car. Towards the end of the night, Wade is wanting to leave. He wants to go to a friend's house to do some illegal things like drugs. Melissa then doesn't want to do this. This causes a fight. Well, Wade has her keys, of course, because she doesn't have them. So Wade decides he is going to go to this friend's house. Melissa is upset. She doesn't want to go. She does not go. So because Melissa did not go with Wade, Melissa leaves with her friend for the night and stays there. Melissa wakes the next day to missed calls, several missed calls from a number that she does not know. This situation was a final for her, a final for the relationship between her and Wade. All she wanted at this point was to get her car back from Wade. So she gets a hold of Wade, agrees to meet him at her spa that she owns. When Melissa actually agrees with Wade to meet up with her, they meet up at this spa that she owns, and Wade is not in Melissa's car. Wade is in a Nissan Versa, a black one. Wade then wanted Melissa to get into this black Nissan that is not her car, and Melissa refused. So Wade proceeds to try to drag her into this car, and Melissa puts her hands up to try to get away from Wade. In this process, Wade starts getting very angry with Melissa. Because Wade couldn't get her out of this car, he gets out of the car and he grabs Melissa and takes her down onto the ground. As Wade takes her down to the ground, he is beating her. At one point, they end up in the spa and the upstairs, and Wade is continuing to beat on her. And at one point, he gives her a bloody nose. And then when he does this, she somehow frees herself from him and she runs and she goes to another business. Wade then, he leaves the scene and he flees. Melissa and other eyewitnesses are calling 911 over this whole thing that happened. This attack between Melissa and Wade was not the first attack. In the beginning of their relationship, Wade actually got very mad with Melissa because of text messages on her phone, and he ends up choking her and tries to beat on her. And in the process of this, he ties her hands, he ties her feet, and then he strips her down. And then after that, he SA'd her. Wade was then arrested, and then the charges were dropped for him. But then he was put in jail again, arrested, because he had warrants against him in other counties. He was then let out on parole. Now, after the attack at the spa, because Wade Wilson decided to leave and dip out away after this attack, police did not know where he was. So they were on the lookout trying to find him. But as this was going on, Wade was still in contact with Melissa, still trying to call her, text her, and try to manipulate the situation. So because of this, the police got the idea to lure Wade to a place so that they could try to get him. And they actually got him to where he was at a Crab Shack restaurant. But when they did this, he still somehow got away from the police officer, even when the police officer tried blocking him. After this happens, Wade is then spotted at another place, a business. After this happens, Wade is then spotted and called about by another business, a printing business, and Wade knew this person. They weren't friends, they just knew each other. But this business owner called about Wade, saying that he had no shirt, no shoes, just a pair of sweatpants on, and he was covered in blood. And he said that Wade was asking him to try to help him get out of town, and that he killed people. After this business owner calls about this, he comes back out to see where Wade is, and Wade is gone. Police come and they go and they check out the business. They go and they find the actual car. Remember, he was driving this black Nissan Versa, and it was still sitting there where he left it before he came into the business. They go into this car, they find blood everywhere, and then they find out that this car is not even his, that this is actually somebody else's car. And when they run these plates, they find out it belongs to a Kristen, that it belongs to a Kristen Milton. And the phone number that Wade was actually calling on, remember when he was calling Melissa and Melissa didn't know this number? Well, this phone number was also her phone that they found in the same car. The police are wondering, who is this Kristen Milton? who is this? So then they find a emergency number to contact, and it's her cousin. So they get in contact with her cousin, and her cousin says that she hasn't talked to her all day, that she's not sure where she is, where she could be. But she informs them that the night before, she was with her best friend Stephanie. They get a hold of Stephanie, her best friend, and her best friend Stephanie says that they did hang out the night before, that they did hang out the night before, that they hung out with a couple guys, and one of the guys' names was JR. Stephanie informs the police that they did hang out for the night, that they were at the bar for a little bit, and then they left and they went to Kristen's house. And they hung out there, and then Stephanie, she had to leave for work the next day because she had to work in the AM. Well, she leaves Stephanie with this JR guy. She says, goodbye, I will talk to you soon, I'll talk to you during the day. When Stephanie gets off work, she tries texting Christine, calling her with no response. When she goes to her house, she finds police there waiting for her, and she informs Stephanie that Christine is now no longer alive, and that she was found wrapped up in a comforter and she had been beaten and choked. So police are still trying to find Wade Wilson after all these crimes. Wade Wilson is nowhere to be found. So police, they figure out his father, Stephen, is still in contact with Wade Wilson. So they talk to Stephen, and Stephen says that, yes, actually he has been recently talking to Wade. And that when he did speak with him, that Wade was asking him also, just like the business owner, that he needed a way to get out of town. And his father, of course, asked and said, well, why do you need to do that? And he says, well, because I've killed people. And his father asks, well, what do you mean you've killed people? And Wade says, well, I stayed with a woman and she fell asleep in the bed, and I went over, got on top of her, and I started choking her until she died. And he called her some names that I will not say. When Wade's father asks why you did this, why did you do this, Wade? Wade says, I don't know, Dad. I just felt like I had to do it. And then he says that he took her car and her phone and went driving around, and down the street there was a woman walking. And he went up to the woman and asked for directions, asking about a school. And this lady was only happy to help him with directions. So she gets into the car. While in the car, Wade starts choking this lady while he's still driving. She passes out. He thinks she's dead. He stops the car after he finds a spot to put her body, and he figures out she is still breathing. So he drags her body out of the car and puts it to where he can run over it. And he says, quote unquote, he ran over her body until it looked like spaghetti.
So let's start with the first girl. If you could tell the jurors, what did he tell you?
He just said he met a girl at a bar. They went back to her house, hung out for a little bit, and then she fell asleep.
What did he say happened after she fell asleep?
He said he got on top of her and choked her.
What name did he call her? Did he refer to her in a derogatory term?
He said, I choked that bitch.
Okay. And what did he say he did after he choked her?
He said he stayed in the house for a little while, and then he rolled her up and was going to try to put her in her trunk, but he couldn't lift her.
Did he say why he was unable to put her in her trunk?
He said that he felt like rigor mortis had started to set in.
And does rigor mortis make your body stiff? You didn't know?
I think so. Yeah.
So he just told you that that was the reason that he couldn't lift her and get her into her trunk?
Yes, ma'am.
And when he said her trunk, it was the trunk of her car he was going to put her in?
Yes, ma'am.
So what did he tell you he did when he couldn't get her body into her own trunk?
He left her there and took her car.
What did he say about the second girl?
He said he saw her walking down the street and stopped and asked her for directions. And she got in the car with him.
What did he say happened once she got in the car with him?
He said he reached over and choked her.
And did he tell you that he choked her while he was driving?
Yes, ma'am.
Now,
So Stephen, Wade's dad, he knew that Wade was still in town. He just didn't know exactly where he was in town. So police came up with the idea to send an Uber, maybe convince his father to send Wade an Uber so that they could find his house. Stephen talks to Wade and he talks him into this because he says, hey, why don't you come back to my place? It'll be safer for you, better than being in some unknown home that you shouldn't be in. This works. The police find where Wade and the police arrest him. Police later then find out that the lady that was walking down the street that Wade asked for directions was named Diane Ruiz. That she usually would take a walk to work if she didn't have a ride. If she didn't have her normal Uber ride to pick her up, she would take a walk to work. And this day is the same day that Wade Wilson picked up a lady and asked for directions. Diane was then found in an empty lot, beaten, bruised arms, and a bruised body. And they found her phone in the car that Wade was driving. Christine and Diana had to deal with this man taking their life, bruising their bodies, bruising their organs, breaking and fracturing their bones.
he had a careful plan. He didn't murder Christine or Diane in front of people. He gained trust. He selected Christine at the Buddha, and he selected Diane as she was walking. He secluded Christine in her own home, and he secluded Diane in the car. And then he tortured and strangled them both. He used calm and cool reflection. He waited to kill Christine. He waited after they had left Jason's home. He waited all night into the early morning hours after Stephanie had gone home. And that's when he killed her, not in the heat of passion, but when she had gone to sleep.
Point with Wade being in prison, jail, he has already tried to escape. Luckily, one of the inmates that he actually sent a note to said, I will be escaping tonight, and giving information on what he was doing. They found a cracked window, and the metal from that window was taken off, as well as a bench that was put and stuck to the ground was taken up off of there. Tell me this guy is not smart or calculated. Wade was charged with escape and criminal mischief. And Wade's roommate, was also charged as well. Because how did he not know? I mean, he's staying there. He's in the same cell. It only makes sense. Wade has also been charged with dealing with drugs. They found little areas that he was stashing drugs and distributing them to other people. He did all this as well as pleading not guilty.
And only on-camera interview since he was indicted on murder charges more than 3 years ago. And I had a lot of questions.
Did you kill Christine Milton and Diane Ruiz?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
No surprise there, considering he pleaded not guilty. He seemed confident, even smug at times while sporting his orange jumpsuit and new face tattoos.
I'm not a monster. Yeah, I'm not a saint either by any means. I made bad decisions in the past, of course.
While Wilson is accused of taking 2 lives, he claims to have tipped off investigators about a plot to kill another woman while behind bars. According to an arrest report late last year, Tristan Gendron asked Wilson to help kill the mother of his child, so his domestic charges would be dropped. Wilson couldn't do it himself. He was in jail. But Gendron asked if his crew on the outside could.
He just thought that I was the person to ask for that.
This is a copy of the note Gendron wrote Wilson in jail with details of the hit job. It came with a $200,000 payout. Gendron said the money was in a safe at Gendron's funeral and cremation services in Fort Myers.
People would accept $10,000, $200,000, surely, but I'm not that type of person.
Instead, he reported it to the state attorney's office and became a sworn witness.
I don't know her personally whatsoever.
Wade Wilson's trial lasted 3 days. A lot of witnesses coming forward.
So, sitting no more than 20 feet from the convicted, who beat Christine, murdered Christine, and threw her away like garbage. I hope you understand this is not the ideal scenario to be sharing personal stories, although you would have loved them. There are no words to describe the absolutely lovely Christine Ann Milton, but I will try. She was precious, not just to me, to everyone who knew her. She was a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a niece, and a cousin. She was loved, and her life had value. Christine was remarkably funny, had a quick wit, and an entirely unique personality. If you were with her, you laughed. We laughed every single day. When you were with her, you felt safe and understood, never judged. She was a relief to your soul just to sit next to her. She had a way about her. Children loved her because Christine was good and they could feel it. She wasn't an aunt. She was the aunt. Christine was the godmother of my son, and it was her greatest honor and one that she deserved. Our children miss her in ways I could never articulate, and it is gut-wrenching to see them so destroyed. They were robbed of her. Christine will never experience motherhood, a role she was born to.
One of the doctors that dealt with Wade Wilson talks about his mental health.
June 18th and 19th for a total of 7 hours.
Okay. Were you able to obtain other background information pertaining to Mr. Wilson, such as jail records or other medical records?
Correct.
And do you know how many pages you had the opportunity to review?
There were hundreds and hundreds of pages from the Department of Correction, mental health, jail records that I reviewed.
Okay. And is there anything that you specifically recall at this time having read that indicated to you that Mr. Wilson may have mental health issues?
The records going back over 10 years were indicative that Mr. Wilson presented with numerous psychiatric, psychological symptomatology. He was on a variety of different psychotropic medications. They tried many medications. He currently is on medication, lithium and Celexa. Both those are psychotropic medications.
What do you mean by psychotropic?
Psychotropic are medications that deal specifically with major mental illness, either psychosis or depression or a combination of both. He's been treated for these conditions for over 10 years, reflective in the records.
Do you recall any specific diagnoses, medical diagnoses?
He's been diagnosed with several different bipolar. He's been diagnosed with depression, anxiety, He's been diagnosed with schizophrenia. He's been diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, adjustment disorder. There's a variety of different diagnoses that have been offered.
His conclusion is that he has sports-induced injury to his head as a child. And mixing this with illegal substances like drugs makes it worse. Another doctor did testing on Wade Wilson, and it came back inconclusive, that there's always just a few. This doctor says that Wade Wilson was very hard to read, that he was paranoid. He was afraid that the officers were going to hear what he was saying while he was talking to the doctor. And the doctor said that he did not seem delusional, that he could actually pay attention, talk, and that it seemed like he could have a normal way of living. Towards the end of the court, the lawyer for Wade Wilson comes back in, again, talking about his mental health.
I mean, I'm not arguing whether these ladies are dead. We're not arguing, but the premeditation. First off, let's go through the timeline. He and Jason Shepard meet Miss Milton and Amy Slobodian, I think her name was, at the Buddha. He goes home, leaves Melissa Montanez, his girlfriend, there, takes her car, and apparently Jason drove them back to Miss Melton's house. They have sex. They have consensual sex. Jason Shepard said so. And then something happened. I suspect it was the drugs. Shepard was saying, oh yeah, we were doing cocaine, just not my cocaine. That was for me. Well, if you listen to the statement that was played yesterday, Mr. Wilson talks about using flakka. That is not good stuff. It puts holes in your brain.
Objection, facts not in evidence.
Sustained.
Anyway. Why? Rather than premeditation, I would submit to you that the judge is going to give you an instruction on second-degree murder. And one of the, or also known as depraved mind murder. I don't think anyone can argue that none of this was not depraved. But in order to commit second-degree murder, there must be an unlawful killing by an act imminently dangerous to another, no one's arguing that, demonstrating a depraved mind without regard for human life. An act includes a series of related actions arising from and performed pursuant to a single design or purpose. An act is, quote, imminently dangerous to another and demonstrating a depraved mind, end quote, if it is an act or series of acts that a person of ordinary judgment would know is reasonably certain to kill or do serious bodily injury to another, no question about that, is done from ill will, hatred, spite, or an evil intent, and is of such a nature that the act in itself indicates an indifference to human life. Whatever he was doing, nobody's arguing was not depraved. Look at the timeline. Miss Milton was murdered sometime between 2 and 4, maybe, when Miss Slobodian left. She had to go to work. Then there's the incident about 7:30, 8 o'clock with Miss Montanez. According to her fiance, Miss Ruiz, was going to work between 9 and sometime between 9 and 11. She left the house. So the contact between Mr. Wilson and Miss Ruiz is on a road in broad daylight. This isn't some kidnapping in the middle of the night. This is in broad daylight. Again, it's almost a carbon copy of Miss Milton. Again, running over the body 10 to 20 times. Nobody's saying that's not depraved. We're not arguing. He didn't do it. There's solid evidence that he is responsible for those 2 deaths and the battery of Miss Montanez. But Miss Montanez's testimony, you need to think about that, whether this was premeditated Miss Milton had sex with him. He could have just gotten up and left or stayed with her. Instead, he murders her? That's not clear thinking, shall we say. I'm not arguing insanity. I'm just arguing that the state's claiming premeditation, and I'm saying he's whacked out. He's just
talking about how he did not premeditate this, talking about how it was all because of the drug abuse, that he had no control on that. After everything, the courts are considering the death penalty.
So close to getting everything she wanted. I was forced to move states to better accommodate for what I needed for my education. I moved far away from Florida because I grew up everywhere with my mom just to have her be stripped away on a random weekday. I tried my best to avoid going back. She was really excited for my future because she knew I was going to achieve big things, and I refused to disappoint her, even in death, because it helps me push on every day. I would like to share some achievements I've been able to accomplish. I did 3 years of marching band. We achieved superiors in the Blue Ribbon all throughout high school. My senior year, I achieved my high school's most principal award. Sophomore year, I won my first scholarship based off of my art portfolio. I graduated high school. I got accepted into all the colleges I applied and also received a full ride scholarship from one. My senior year, I received the John Phillips User Award for marching band. I got my driver's license. I received my first car. During COVID, I ran a whole jewelry business for 2 years at 16. I got my first job. I'm getting my first apartment July. I'm a year ahead in my college education, and I have my first internship as a graphic designer. I only listed 13 out of many, both big and small, achievements. All 13 of these achievements my mom didn't get the chance to see me accomplish. My mother will never get the chance to see me get married, get to see me graduate college as a first generation graduate, get to see me get my first real job. During college, I was sent to the ER for the first time. I got into my first car accident, and the only person I wanted to call was my mom, or how she went missing. I trusted my gut so much. Everything told me that she was coming home, and I haven't been able to trust her again, or how when I was told she was missing while walking home from my bus.
So how do you guys feel about this case? Me, I think that this case is wild. I feel like this guy is such a creep. I mean, just look at him. He looks scary, honestly. I mean, even with, you know, even if he didn't have those tattoos, that man being in society is very scary. I mean, people were saying that he has charm, that he's attractive. I mean, come on. Let's just not. He needs to be put away, or he needs his life taken from him. I mean, please do not bring him back out into society. If you guys are still here, I'm really glad. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you subscribe. I hope you give me some comments, ask me some questions, you know, maybe tell me your view of this. Tell me how you feel about it. I haven't seen a lot on it yet, so hopefully more gets out and we can figure this out, find more out. But be safe out there, be careful, and don't talk to strangers.